topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the host and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
What's working on purpose anyway? Each week, we ponder the answer to this question. People ache for meaning and purpose at work, to contribute their talents passionately and know their lives really matter. They crave being part of an organization that inspires them and helps them grow into realizing their highest potential. Business can be such a force for good in the world, elevating humanity. In our program, we provide guidance and inspiration to help usher in this world we all want, working on purpose. Now, here's your host, Dr. Elise Cortez.
Welcome back to the Working on Purpose program, which has been brought to you with passion and pride since February of 2015. Thanks for tuning in this week. Great to have you. I'm your host, Dr. Elise Cortez. Most leaders are sitting on untapped human energy, and I help them unlock it. I'm an organizational psychologist, logotherapist, workforce advisor, and the founder of the Gusto Now movement. But the title I live by is much simpler. I traffic in energy, not the surface level motivation or another engagement initiative, but the deeper force, what I call gusto, the life force for performance that drives commitment, perseverance, and genuine ownership of a shared mission in the clients we serve. You can learn more about us and how we can work together at gusto-now.com or my personal site, elisecortez.com. Getting into today's program, we have with us Arun Gupta, who is the CEO of Noble Reach Foundation, a public charity with a mission to develop and mobilize America's top talent and innovation networks across academia, industry, and government for high-impact solutions that strengthen the security and prosperity of our nation. He's also a venture capitalist, lecturer at Stanford University, and adjunct entrepreneurship professor at Georgetown University, and author of Venture Meets Mission and the Mission Generation, Reclaim Your Purpose, Rewrite Success, Rebuild Our Future, which is what we're talking about today. His home is Washington, D.C., but he joins us today from San Francisco. Arun, a hearty welcome to Working on Purpose.
Thank you so much for having me, Elise.
You're so welcome. I'm so happy to meet you. And I told you before we got on air that I absolutely devoured and loved your book and totally aligned with Mission Generation. I meant it. You wrote it for me. Thank you for that. As I told you, I learned and got more pearls and insights about myself just reading your book too, and helped me better understand just why I've been on the path that I've been on. So a lot of personal gain that I got out of it too. And I'm so happy to share this with our listeners and viewers around the world.
Very kind to you. Look forward to the conversation.
Well, and I'll also say this, as I shared before we got on air, in the last 10 years, I have read more than 500 books, and this book is outstanding.
Oh, God, it means a lot. I appreciate it.
So welcome. Well, listeners and viewers haven't snuggled up with your background and your experiences I have. So let's just open the conversation with you sharing a bit about your background and just why you were so compelled to write this book.
Yeah, so the lens that I got to writing this book is important for folks to understand. So my father was in public service. He was in the Navy for 45 years. So public service was in our family. I grew up, and my professional career was in venture capital. So I started at Carlisle and was at Columbia Capital. So I saw the power of innovation, the power of entrepreneurship. Mm-hmm. And in the latter half of my career there was really mapping how you could bring the entrepreneurial ecosystem to solve mission-driven problems in government, specifically in areas like cybersecurity and national security. And you saw both the challenges of making that happen, but you also saw the magic when you could make it happen. And I think that really it was hard to go back to just typical venture investing when you could do something that you felt had both purpose to it and profit. After that, I started teaching at Georgetown. I was teaching in business school, and I was teaching at Stanford, Stanford in Washington, and created a class called Valley Meets Mission. Really around, again, how do you take the entrepreneurial spirit of the Valley, but not waste it on Candy Crush 3.0? Like, how do we take that talent, that spirit, that vibrancy, but point it at solving large societal problems, but in a for-profit way? What I saw is that students, when shown the opportunity, naturally gravitated to it. but that the academic institutions themselves were kind of siloing students into, one of two lanes. Either you're going to go make money, but your career may be hollow, or you go solve meaningful problems, but then you forego financial security.
Yeah.
And those felt like two very unsustainable paths, and that showing them that there was a place in between was what inspired writing the first book, Venture Meets Mission, to highlight to them that there's a world there where you could try to do both. Around that, we raised a foundation where we have now a $500 million endowment, really around two of the core tenets of that book, which was the superpowers of our country here in the U.S. is that we create talent better than anywhere else in the world, and we innovate better than anywhere else in the world. And the evidence is that everyone from around the world comes here to do both. What we haven't done is really invest in modernizing the infrastructure so that those two ecosystems are connected to government to solve problems at scale. So we're not getting our best talent going into government, and we're not getting our best innovators to collaborate with government to solve problems at scale. One stat that brings that to life is less than 7% of tech workers in government today are under the age of 30. We have 4 times over the age of 60. And if we really believe we need a tech-forward government to meet our citizen demands, but also maintain global leadership, that should feel like red alert to people. And so we really set out to build a program that did that, and that's what Noble Reach does today, which is like, how do we inspire this next generation around national service, but especially our top tech talent to go into government. And we can talk more about what that program is as we go forward. All I will say, though, in tying it to the book, is that part of what inspired to write the second book, The Mission Generation, was really based on the energy, the positivity, the optimism, the desire of young folks wanting to serve right now. And we felt it was important to get that story out there. We talk about it not only in terms of young folks, but mid-career and late-career folks as well, because we define the mission generation as not about being about age, but about being about agency. And a growing group of folks that really want to combine civic responsibility with personal ambition. They don't want the or, they want the and. And I think there's a lot going on right now, which is why the time is now to really talk about that, highlight it, and also have them not feel alone in feeling that way. And so we can chat more about that.
Well, first, let me say that was beautifully articulated and incredibly inspiring. Certainly up to something. I don't know how many. Apparently, you've been issued more hours in a day than most of us. That's what I'm getting out of this. So, for our listeners and viewers who haven't read the book like I have, you part of what you just said there toward the end starts to speak to what you mean by mission generation. But can you speak to that just more directly?
Sure. Really, what we were really trying to get at in talking about the mission generation was the spirit of folks that we're seeing out there that are really don't want to subscribe to the two binary choices that they feel like are put in front of them. One is going into a world where you can do meaningful work and have civic responsibility and impact people, but in that path, there's not a way to really establish financial security. And the other is to pursue a path of financial security in making money, but in that pathway, you give up the opportunity to really have impact and have meaning. And what we were really highlighting is that what we were seeing is that people no longer wanted to subscribe to either of those. They wanted to integrate those together into a meaningful career. And we started writing it arguably for early career folks, but saw that the same questions existed for mid-career and late career folks. They just manifest themselves differently given the environments that they're in. And the reason we think now's the time to be talking about this again and why this is surfacing up again is that, look, as I said, my dad had one job for 40 years. I had one career, multiple employers, but I stayed in my lane. Going forward, we believe people will have 4 to 6 careers over 60 years. So careers are extending longer and you'll have more of them. And so we don't have the scaffolding to support that. And the reason I say people will be working longer is, I think most people would agree that people are just going to be living longer.
Right.
We're just the early stages of a lot of advancements in life sciences and all the work that's being done around longevity. And so in that process, we will need to be thinking about new scripts of how do we do this. The scripts we have today are built for a more stable world, and they're built for shorter careers. And so we tend to create career pathways that are singular, and that you're going to get on and you stay on for 30 years. I'm going to go and be in the private sector. I'm going to be in the public sector. I'm going to go in academia. I'm going to go into the not-for-profit sector. And we attach ourselves to institutions, and we attach ourselves to titles. Those are getting disrupted. And that's disconcerting to folks, right? Like, with AI and everything happening, there's a swirl around that. Having said that, the only thing that will be stable, we argue, then is purpose and meaning. And what is the why you're doing what you're doing? What's the problem that you're solving that you care about, right? That's how you need to be building your career. Not about the institution that you want to attach to, but what's the problem that really gives you energy, as you said. Really kind of like gets you up in the mornings, right? And has you thinking about it even late at night. And those problems are going to transcend sectors. And so building your career off that will be a more stable way to deal with the ever-changing world that we're walking into in a meaningful way. And so, we argue that stability is the new risk, right? It's riskier today to do the more stable thing because in that process, you're also giving away agency. And in a process, in a time that's changing so quickly, building your career on what you care about and maintaining that agency becomes incredibly important. And so what we try to talk about in the book is about like, how do we think about career pathways differently as people have 4 to 6 careers over an extended period of time? And what's the scaffolding that we need to support that?
So much good stuff in that, Arun. So you're right now speaking of this topic from the vantage point of people and their individual careers. And I want to now kind of pull it a little bit differently from the vantage point of how these organizations that are going to count on that talent to pull them forward can attract them. And so the numbers that you provide in the book are incredible, and I've seen them, many of them in other forms before, but let me just share a couple of them and let you comment on them. You have one statistic, you say that the data confirmed what we were seeing firsthand. 86% of Gen Z and 89% of millennials consider a sense of purpose as essential to job satisfaction. Other research has found that 2/3 of older workers delay retirement specifically to do meaningful work. And your own national surveys found that 4 out of 5 people believe that doing purposeful work helps you live longer. And you say the mission generation isn't a passing trend, it's a fundamental shift spanning every career stage. So why I want you to bring that up and speak to that is, of course, the work that we do at Gusto now is helping to activate meaning and purpose in organizations and culture so that people will be able to be ignited like that. You'll be able to attract that kind of talent to pull you forward. So can you speak a little bit to some of these numbers that you have here and that I just shared?
Yeah. So, context is the why now, right? Context is like, why are people feeling this right now?
Yep.
And, the thesis on that is, look, we're coming off of COVID. We're seeing geopolitical conflict like we haven't seen in decades. We are seeing environmental conflict engage around us. Great power competition with an adversary is back in a way that we, again, have not seen in decades. And then we've got AI that it's creating a very disruptive force. That's a lot of swirl. Yes. That's a lot of history in a short period of time, as one of my friends likes to say. And the belief is that when things are stable, when things are fine, the ground is solid, you focus. It's easy to focus on yourself. It's easy to just to do your own thing. But when it gets shaky, when the sand shifts, and when it gets rocky, you reach out to others for support.
Yeah,
that's a very human reaction. And it's the world we're in right now. And that's the world when people feel uncertainty, when they feel like there's not clarity of what tomorrow is going to look like. You want to be part of something larger than yourself.
Yes.
And I think that's what's driving these numbers, Elise.
Okay.
That's why young folks today are sitting there going, coming off of COVID, like, I want to do something that's meaningful. I don't know what tomorrow holds. how do I get that satisfaction in some capacity? And purpose plays an important role in that. They want to be able to not only be able to tell their friends they're doing things purposely, they internally care about this now, right? In a way, they've had time to reflect on it. And we write, and it was great that you kind of called it out. This line about how mission is kind of like stock options.
Yeah.
I think everyone wants to be part of something mission oriented. They don't know why exactly. They don't even know how valuable it's going to be. But it's no different than like people going like, I just want to go get equity. They don't know what that is, but like they know there's upside to it. There's a lot more upside than what it's going to be coming from just their cash comp. And so the same way people ask for cash plus equity, I think they're looking for income plus mission, because that mission, they don't know what upside is. Is it transformative upside or is it just marginal upside? But they know it's good for them. They know it will give them energy. It's an and. And so I think that's the explanation that we're seeing with the numbers that you highlighted. And again, I don't think this is something that's only for early career folks. I think mid-career folks, again, are asking these same questions. You've been at a firm for 15 years and you get to a certain spot, you're a VP, and you're going like, is this it? Like, I thought there was going to be more to this.
Yeah.
It manifests itself differently because you may have a mortgage and a couple kids and a family, but you're asking yourself some of the same fundamental questions. And then you take folks that are, mid 50s, early 60s, and maybe empty nesting now, and they're asking themselves the same things, right? Like, wait a second, like the scripts we've been given have been all about stability. Studies show, Elise, and you know this better than I, that humans are wired to seek stability and security over even happiness. So we will index towards that. And so we shouldn't be surprised that our systems have been wired that way as well. The issue is that as we get into those scripts of like stability and comfort, again, speaking as someone over 55, you get there and you're like, all right, you're supposed to slow down and just kind of be comfortable and do your thing. And you're like, what if the energy I get is from the discomfort and the vulnerability that I was having putting myself out there?
Yes. You're speaking my love language, Arun.
And so it's that I think is really the question we put out there, which is like, maybe the scripts that we've been given just aren't applying to us now in the same way.
They're old. They need to be retired.
And, I think that's what people are feeling. I also think, and, we talk about this as well, which is, part of the script used to be, life had 3 phases. You learned for your first third of your life, and then you monetized what you learned in a working capacity for the middle third of your life. And then you waited till the last third of your life to return, to give back. Mm-hmm. And, in a world where you're living longer and things are changing really rapidly, I think what we're finding is this idea of like learning and monetizing that for 20 years, that's collapsed.
Yeah.
Right? Because whatever skill you've learned, usually by the 2 years out of school, it's already obsolete. So learning is continuous. And likewise, this idea of waiting till the end for purpose, I think folks are feeling like, I want to do that. I want to integrate that now.
Yeah. Don't know when the exit ramp is coming. So
stages, I think what we were seeing is like 3 threads getting woven together is what people want their career to look like. Yeah. And I think that's the transition that we're in right now.
Beautiful. Let's let our listeners and viewers reflect on that as we take our first break. That's a good place for them to consider what you just shared there. There was quite a bit. I'm your host, Dr. Elise Cortez. We were on the air with Arun Gupta, who is the CEO of Noble Reach Foundation, a public charity with a mission to develop and mobilize America's top talent and innovation networks across academia, industry, and government for high-impact solutions that strengthen the security and prosperity of our nation. He's also a venture capitalist, lecturer at Stanford University. We've been talking a bit about what's under the mission generation, why it's so important, how it's coming, how it's coalescing. After the break, we're going to start talking about how you can use what they've written in the book to help mobilize you toward this mission generation yourself. We'll be right back.
Dr. Elise Cortez is a management consultant specializing in meaning and purpose, an inspirational speaker and author. She helps companies visioneer for greater purpose among stakeholders and develop purpose-inspired leadership and meaning-infused cultures that elevate fulfillment, performance, and commitment within the workforce. To learn more or to invite Elise to speak to your organization, please visit her at elisecortez.com. Let's talk about how to get your employees working on purpose. This is Working on Purpose with Dr. Elise Cortez. To reach our program today or to open a conversation with Elise, send an email to Elise, A-L-I-S-E, at elisecortez.com. Now, back to Working on Purpose.
Thanks for staying with us and welcome back to Working on Purpose. I'm your host, Dr. Elise Cortez, as I am dedicated to helping create a world where organizations thrive because their people thrive. They're led by inspirational leaders that help them find and contribute their greatness, and we do business that betters the world. I keep researching and writing my own books, and oftentimes the fodder and research comes from this program and what I learn from my guests. So one of my last books that came out is called The Great Revitalization: How Activating Meaning and Purpose Can Radically Enliven Your Business. And I wrote it to help leaders understand what today's discerning workforce wants from you to be able to give their very best and stick around for you. And then I provide you 22 best practices to equip you through your leadership and your culture to provide that for them. You can find my books on Amazon or elisecortez.com. If you are just now joining us, my guest is Arun Gupta. He is the co-author of The Mission Generation: Reclaim Your Purpose, Rewrite Success, Rebuild Our Future. Okay, so I would love to dive in now that we've really set a really nice table for why this is so important and have people leaning in. Let's also give them some of the tools from your book. But first, I think it might be useful to just start just briefly talking about the 4 forms of resistance that often block people from pursuing meaningful work. I thought that was really, really powerful if we could hit on that.
Yeah, so as we lay into how do we get to wanting to do more mission-driven work and why people want to do it, the first thing we felt like we needed to address up front is, so what keeps us from doing it? Yeah. It seems so obvious that everyone should be doing it. Like, why doesn't everyone just jump into it? And we called out 4 sets of resistances, which are really layers starting from the inside working out. The first and probably the most important is a psychological layer, inside of you. What keeps you from doing it? Meaning fear of failure. Is it, can I do this? Imposter syndrome. Those are all things that, individuals have to grapple with when they start to look at making these transitions. The second is more relational resistance. Here, what we talk about is more actually the people that are your, friends and family that you're close to, people that care about you. So it's coming from a place of love, but may bring resistance in by the language that they use. Saying, hey, Elise, that seems a little, risky. Would you really want to do that? Those kinds of things can stop people from really wanting to move the next forward, because you're looking for almost a sense of approval from those closest to you. And if you don't feel like you get it, you may not pursue it in the same way. The third is societal, working out. Here we're talking more about like a concern that like, will people value this?
Yeah.
Will it be a prestige marker? Will it be meaningful to others? But again, all of those, like relational and societal, those are external benchmarks, right? Those are looking for external validation in different capacities. And then the final one is institutional. Like once you get into an industry, whether it again be academia, government, industry, the idea that like I've been here now 5 years or 10 years, can I just leave? Like, is there a level of lock-in that keeps people from, pivoting or moving across sectors? And that's real. People within your colleagues, for example, going like, well, why would you leave this? And what you don't realize many times is, them saying that is less about what you're doing. It's more of a commentary on the decisions they made.
Yes.
And them questioning their own decisions, right? And so the fact that you're looking to do something different can surface those feelings in a way.
100%, 100%.
And that's what is the institutional resistance.
Okay, that was, I think, our listeners and viewers, I encourage you to consider which of those resistances you might be experiencing. Now then, let's move on to start showcasing some of the beautiful tools you have in your book, Arun. So starting with the Compass Capital, I thought that, or Compass Capitals, there are 6 of them. And 2 that you start with in the book, of course, are mission and money. And I love how you talk about it, as you've been saying already, is that, that they're not, at odds with each other. They can compound and reinforce each other. And I appreciate that. So let's go through the 6 Compass Capitals, if we can.
And so in defining the Compass Capitals, the lens we tried to bring to this, once we've identified the resistances, once you can name it and know what you want to do, we also need to think about, like, how do we define success?
Yeah.
And so, which is why part of the subtitle includes rewriting success, right? Like, how do we think about success differently? And the reason we think that's important is because our systems are wired for a certain definition of success.
Yep.
We talk about the idea of net worth. If we were, in a larger room, or if we had you asked your audience, everyone kind of tell us what your net worth is, people would probably scribble down some, approximation of their savings account, investment portfolio, and real estate assets. It's a financial number.
Yeah.
It's the way we think about it. And it's accepted when someone says what's your net worth, that's what they're talking about. And the problem is that, if wealth is what you accrue and net worth is what you bring to the table, we all know that we bring much more than just that, as far as value and what we bring each day. And as we think about that, we need to put words around it. The problem is we don't put words around it. And so what are those other capitals? And in that context, what we try to define, there were 5 other capitals that go with financial. And we, as you stated, are very clear that financial capital is important. So this is not hey, don't worry about finances, go do what you need to go do.
Right.
Hey, we recognize it's important. Because if you don't feel a sense of financial security, that's going to dwarf other feelings. Mm-hmm. But all we're saying is that can't be the only dominant feeling.
Right.
And also in that way, financial goes from being a place that can give you autonomy to do what you want to becoming a scoreboard. And once financial becomes a scoreboard, that has its own downside to it.
Right.
And so you start with wanting to have financial security so you can create autonomy. I think many get swept up in it then and becomes a scoreboard, which then doesn't lead to a more balanced way of creating the capital. So what are the other capitals? So we talk about, for example, in a world that we're going into, especially in AI, experiential capital, the different experiences that you have. In a world where AI goes after IQ over EQ, meaning AI can go deep and it can codify expertise well. What's harder to do is unique human experiences that lead to judgment. Mm-hmm. So the more unique experiences you have that are different, a more unique human lens you bring to the table in any discussion, analysis that takes place. So experiential capital, we think in the world we're walking into, becomes incredibly more valuable. And being able to make sure you're putting yourselves in new experiences that push you out of your comfort zone. The second, learning capital. Not about learning skills, but how do you drive curiosity, right? In a world of AI, it's less about having the right answers. It's about knowing the right questions to ask. And arguably the limitation around what humans and AI can do together is about imagination of what humans bring to the table. And that really, at the core of that, is curiosity. The third is trust capital. And arguably, when I look back on my own career, I think it's probably the most valuable one. And that's relationships that you build. And we talk about, like, trust capital is the only capital you really don't own, right? Because it's bestowed upon you by people around you.
Yeah.
You earn it, but you don't own
it. Yeah.
You earn it, but you don't own it. But trust capital is incredibly important. And I would argue again, in the world of AI, that human trust element will become even more valuable. And I look at my career and things I'm able to do today, a lot of it was based on relationships that we invested in and grew over a 30-year span. That's hard to replicate. And so that's where trust capital comes from. Health capital. Here we talk about the context of self-care and taking care of yourself. If you are going to be working now for 60 years and 70 years, it becomes important to make sure you're taking care of yourself, not physically, mentally, emotionally, and that may even include taking, career transition breaks to re-energize and recharge to get back into it. And so we think health capital is incredibly important. And then finally, the one that, the book ended with financial capital is really mission and meaning. Because at the end of the day, people want to have meaning in what they do. All of these don't have to be equal at all times, but we intentionally use the word capitals in there because, like financial capital, we wanted to draw the parallel that if you even invest a little bit early and a little bit consistently, it'll compound over time. And that compounding effect will give you an ability to do things that you would have never thought were possible. And bring a sense of balance, but also be a navigation tool for you as you in a world that's changing really rapidly. Because it's going to be less about having the right pathways, but it's more about being able to, navigate with the right direction.
Beautifully explained. Thank you, Arun. Again, let's let our listeners and viewers reflect on that as we take our second break. I'm your host, Dr. Elise Cortez. We've been on the air with Arun Gupta, who is the CEO of Noble Reach Foundation, which is a public charity with a mission to develop and mobilize America's top talent and innovation networks across academia, industry, and government for high-impact solutions that strengthen the security and prosperity of our nation. He's also a venture capitalist, lecturer at Stanford University. We've been talking a bit about some of the tools he has in the book. They have in the book here. After the break, we're first going to queue up some of the cohort of investors that are seeing no longer just content to see the mission and returns of these rival goals of just financial, but also putting their money where their mouth is to be able to extend this reach. It's really, really fascinating and inspiring. We'll be right back.
Dr. Elise Cortez is a management consultant specializing in meaning and purpose, an inspirational speaker and author. She helps companies visioneer for greater purpose among stakeholders and develop purpose-inspired leadership and meaning-infused cultures that elevate fulfillment, performance, and commitment within the workforce. To learn more or to invite Elise to speak to your organization, please visit her at elisecortez.com. Let's talk about how to get your employees working on purpose. This is Working on Purpose with Dr. Elise Cortez. To reach our program today or to open a conversation with Elise, send an email to Elise, A-L-I-S-E, at elisecortez.com. Now, back to Working on Purpose.
Thanks for staying with us and welcome back to Working on Purpose. I'm your host, Dr. Elise Cortez. I mentioned in the last break that the Great Revitalization came out, and I mentioned the 22 best practices that I use to equip you to create that destination workplace. On gusto-now.com, you can find a simple 3-page assessment to learn just how you're faring as a destination workplace. If you are just now joining us, my guest is Arun Gupta. He's the co-author of The Mission Generation, Reclaim Your Purpose, Rewrite Success, Rebuild Our Future. So as I queued up before the break here, Arun, I've seen this in some of my other guests, but the list of organizations and investment groups that you list in your book here, of course, we won't list them all, is incredible. And so this idea that I mentioned that there's this cohort of investors are no longer wanting to see mission and returns as rival goals. And what we're seeing too, what I've been seeing is that they're actually more attracted to mission-oriented organizations because of their resiliency, their fervor, their united workforce around that cause. And so if you could, there's a whole bunch in here, just if you could just share with us a couple of them to help us understand who they are and what they're investing in and maybe why.
Yeah, so it's important to look at it from different asset classes. So you have the large financial institutions, like the investment banks, and there you see the J.P. Morgans, the Goldman Sachs of the world, taking a real leadership role in wanting to say we want to support national resilience companies. Jamie Dimon and J.P. Morgan's announced that they've got a strategic resilience initiative whereby they're going to dedicate $1.5 trillion over the next 10 years to companies that are working at this intersection of national resilience. Because no longer do we think that national security problems or national resilience problems are really government's problems. It's an all-of-country issue. You see firms like even Goldman Sachs taking a real leadership role with how they bring in talent and wanting to support these kinds of companies in a meaningful way. And so you're seeing, the most prominent in financial institutions taking that role. In addition, you're starting to see or are seeing venture capital firms play a leadership role here, in recognizing that and they're not doing it. And look, let's just be clear: this isn't just altruism.
Right.
Like you said, this is good business sense.
Right.
And that's fine. And that's the whole point. Like, we need a world where we can have mission-driven capitalism, where we could be doing good, and in the process of doing well, we're doing good for people around us. And so in those kinds of firms that we're seeing, you see firms like Andreessen Horowitz, firms like General Catalyst, Founders Fund, taking a real role of building, some of the biggest companies that we see today, and the largest companies around things like national security, healthcare, energy, and solving space and solving these big problems. And, they require a different kind of capital. They require a different kind of patience. But what they're also seeing is that the fervor of being able to attract great talent is also much easier here.
Yeah.
Because you're able to show that you're making a real difference. And back to the idea of having stock options, that equity that you may get in one of these companies, and we just saw one of the largest IPOs ever, as an example, can be also really financially rewarding for you in the process. And so I think as those success stories are coming out and people are seeing that more, we're starting to see, more funding go into these kinds of companies. As more funding goes in, you see better talent come in. As better talent comes in, the ecosystem gets stronger. As the ecosystem gets stronger, you see better success stories. You see better success stories, the early investors make money, and when they make money, money goes back in. It's a virtuous cycle, right? It's the story of the valley. And in a weird way, it is the valley going back to its roots. Silicon Valley started as a government initiative, right? It was DARPA. It was a lot of federal funding that was going in those early kind of venture deals. And so the fact that it's now the valley it's leading the innovation ecosystem is, I think, incredibly important to note. But also, I think one of the key differentiators why I remain optimistic for where we're going, because I think two things that are really hard to replicate anywhere else in the world is our education ecosystem and our innovation ecosystem. And largely because those are both deeply cultural. You don't just put up 100 universities and say, hey, they're just going to operate the same way. And you're not going to just create a venture ecosystem, because people have tried for the last 30, 40 years. It's not like people are holding a secret. People try, but it's a deeply cultural thing. And I think it's a very American thing. It's an American spirit where you can try, you can fail, you dust yourself up, you get up again. People around you ask you, what did you learn? And if you have good answers to that, they want to give you another shot. And then you do it again. In many places, you fail, and it's kind of, you got a scarlet letter on you, and no one's going to give you funding again. And so that's a hard cultural thing to unwind. And I think that's what makes this country great. I think it is, look, we're at the 250th right now.
Right.
And so it really is kind of, apropos to talk about the fact that, our founding fathers were entrepreneurs when you think about it.
Right.
We call them founders. They created a document, like a definitive document. We call it the Declaration of Independence. They had a vision, but they didn't have a pathway. So there was a lot of testing and learning along the way. And they've created a remarkable system for us today. And, what we try to pose in the book at the 250th juncture is that it's the mission generation's now opportunity to step up. And it's either an opportunity or a challenge to build a system of interdependence. So the same way our founding fathers created a system of independence, now we've got to, if we're going to continue progressing in the way that we'd like to see, we have to recognize that it's going to be the interdependence of these sectors, the interdependence of how we work in a community, the interdependence of how we go solve problems that will enable us to reach our highest potential.
I think that's why I just need to say amen. Let me just add that. Okay, so also since part of what we do in the show, Arun, is we want to introduce the ideas, inspire something bigger for people to reach toward, but also enable them or equip them with tools from what we get from the book. So if you could introduce the mission flywheel, that's powerful.
So once we talk about the capital, if we really wanted to push into the how do you do it, how do you implement it, right? Well, let's get out of theory, and at the core is, in the world that's changing rapidly, that we've been somewhat architected or educated to think, wait for clarity and then go act. And the overarching theme of the mission flywheel, and then I'll talk about its subcomponents, really is that, like, in the world we're going into, you need to start acting, and then you get signals, and then that will bring you clarity. So again, we're used to waiting for clarity before we act. And what we're now saying is we need to flip that. You need to start acting and doing things. And the signals you get from those actions will give you clarity on what you should go do. And part of the reason we say that is, in a world that's changing really rapidly, by the time you wait for clarity, by the time you get that clarity, the conditions that you used to get that clarity have changed. And so you're going to find yourself in always a uncertain paralysis of never acting. Whereas if you just start doing, and it's very much an entrepreneurial way of thinking, you will then, figure out, test and learn, but you have to also acknowledge that, like, everything that you do isn't intended or should work. And that can't be viewed as wasted time. That's a signal to say that's not good for me. That's fine. And again, I think many times we get wired to, like, I don't want to do something if I don't think it's going to work. And you got to get over that, is what we try to talk about. So in the mission flywheel, to your question, Elise, we talk about, like, starting to think about what does give you that energy, right? What would fill your mission capital bucket? What are the things that truly matter to you, right? And then around that, think about, how do you reframe your experiences? Like, think about what you're doing, what's that learning capital? What are the curiosity? What are the questions? But, like, how do you think about, I think what holds many people back is that they're worried that doing something different means I'm starting from ground zero again.
Right.
And the reason we say reframe your experiences is that's just not true. In that, you may have been doing something different, but you were building, as we talked about in the capitals, either experiences or relationships or trust or impact, and you were building assets, you were building things. How do we reframe that to where you want to go? Yeah. And so that's the reframing your experience piece. Finally, then next we talk about running experiments. Back to the idea of, like, act and then get clarity. Start thinking about, like, what are 3 or 4 things that you can start to do to test out, like, where would I get my energy from? It could be volunteering. It could be a side hustle. It could be being an advisor to someone. It could just be networking and with people that are outside your comfort zone. in different areas to see what they're doing. But running those experiments, will give you, running those experiments will give you a sense of like, where do I get positive and negative signals that give me the energy that I want going forward. The next one, I think, arguably is an important one that gets overlooked.
Absolutely.
And that is recruit allies.
Yep.
And I say that because you can do all the first 3 or 4 things, and what you'll find is that it's very vulnerable, and it's hard, and it can feel lonely. Mm-hmm. And if you can recruit allies, though, and when I say allies, these are the people that when you tell them, like, I'll use myself as an example. I was thinking about writing a book. I've never written a book before. I don't know, have any business writing a book. And you tell some friends you're thinking of writing a book, and they react in one of 2 ways. You're writing a book? Like, why would you write a book? And then you have another group that's like, wow, that's kind of cool. You're thinking of writing a book. That latter group, then you get more energy from.
Right.
Because they're kind of wanting to see you succeed. They're just kind of like, now, that doesn't mean you will, but you do need that energy, right? You do need to feel like you've got some people that are kind of believing in what you're pursuing. And then from that, as you kind of run these experiments, you get your allies, then you can start to think about, like, how do you scale what it is now that you really want to go do? How do you scale it? And then how do you, make it something that you can make sustainable through your health capital and incorporate it in a way that it becomes something that's extendable over a extended period of time.
Mm-hmm. And then the last one, of course, is well-being, right? Regenerate your well-being, because this is the engine that's going to keep this train moving.
Yep.
So Arun, we've come very close to the end of the show. It went by so fast, and there's so much more I could have gotten out of you, which is why listeners and viewers, you just got to pick up the book. But say in like a minute or so, what would you like to leave our listeners with?
That I couldn't be more optimistic in the time that we're in right now, despite the fact that it can feel very uncertain. And that I feel that uncertainty comes from us striving to hold on to the old scripts and seeking stability. And that if one can start to think about ways to embrace the change that we're entering into and embrace the new scripts that are in front of us, once we get through that unsettling period, it can be very empowering, because I think it puts agency back into the individuals to build the kind of careers that they want, as opposed to having that agency in the hands of institutions. So my big thing with folks right now is, lean in hard, think about risk, but don't obsess about downside. Also think about the upside, and think about what could this mean if it goes right for me. And if it can be transformational, you should go do it.
Thank you, Arun, for writing the book, for coming on air to share about it. I'm so grateful that our paths crossed, that we've met, that you have totally positively lifted me and reinforced my journey as well. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast to talk about this.
Elise, thank you so much for your kind words. It was great to be on this, have this discussion with you, and greatly appreciated your questions.
Most welcome. Listeners and viewers, you are going to want to learn more about Arun Gupta and the work he's doing in the emerging technology, entrepreneurship, public policy, and venture finance communities, and his books, The Mission Generation. You can start there by learning more by going to themissiongeneration.com. Last week, if you missed the live show, you can always catch it via recorded podcast. We were on air with Owen O'Kane, who is recognized as one of the United Kingdom's leading mental health experts. He is a practicing psychotherapist and a former National Health Security clinical lead. We talked about his latest book, Addicted to Anxiety, How to Break the Habit. It was just layered full of all ways that you start to recognize how you are attached to anxiety and how you can move away from that. Next week, we'll be on air with Tonil Miller, once again, talking about her latest book, Flourishing from Within, Reclaiming Who You Came to Be and the Life That's Actually Yours. See you then. Let's continue learning how to help more people flourish, elevate their operating systems as leaders, and create destination workplaces where legendary business takes place. Let's work on purpose.
We hope you've enjoyed this week's program. Be sure to tune into Working on Purpose, featuring your host, Dr. Elise Cortez, each week on W4CY. Together, we'll create a world where business operates conscientiously, leadership inspires impassioned performance, and employees are fulfilled in work that provides the meaning and purpose they crave. See you there. Let's work on purpose.